What is up, everybody? Josh Tapp here again, and welcome back to the Lucky Titan. And we've got the first of many coming back on for the second time. Deacon Hayes is here to kick it off with us. You guys probably remember his episode. I want to say you were back at least over a year ago, and it's been quite a while since we've had you on, Deacon. So I'm excited to really dive into what's been happening. And for those of you listening, you're going to see that over the next few months, we're going to be bringing a lot of people back on the show to start seeing what changed, right? I love to do this sort of thing because it allows us to say, okay, where's your money where your mouth was, right? Did you actually do what you told us to do last time, right? And that's what I love to see the direction that people have gone this year. So Deacon, first off, say what's up to everybody and we'll hop in, man.
Hey, Josh. Well, I'm just grateful to be back on and excited to kind of share what we've been doing, what I've been up to, and it's great to be here.
Yeah, you bet, man. I'm stoked to have you back. So Deacon, guys, just so you know, this guy runs Well Kept Wallet. So this is a pretty awesome website. Literally, I would just say it's almost like tailored to non-entrepreneurs or newer entrepreneurs, but I think everybody should go check this out because it gives you a lot of ideas of how to use what money you do have to become that everyday millionaire. And these guys just released a rap song that you guys should all go check out. So it's wellkeptwallet.com/everyday-millionaire-song. So go check that out. I will also link that here in the description. But Deacon, let's hop into the nitty gritty. So what's happened in the last year and a half since we talked? What's been the big thing?
It's interesting. There's definitely been some ups and downs. And I think part of it is, I've had the blog for, you can call it a blog. I mean, it's actually, I guess you call it a personal finance website now since 2010. So 12 years, right? I started to get into well, how many times can you talk about making money, saving money, paying off debt, budgeting, investing, And so what are new ways? What are things that we haven't thought of before that we could do to create new revenue streams or find new affiliates that would be a good partner and also be great for our audience? And so really started to expand and see different verticals start to grow, which was exciting, right? To kind of add these new revenue streams, new ways to reach people, new ways to help people and make money at the same time. So that's kind of what we've been working on over the past year and a half.
That's awesome. Well, and Deacon, we were talking about this in the pre-call here, but the number one question I get is how do you monetize your show, right? How do you monetize content, right? Because I'm one of the few guys, I feel like I don't monetize my show directly. You all know our methodologies for closing deals or whatever, like big ticket sales. But what Deacon, you guys have done is you've really created a true business around your content. And that's what I thought was so unique. And one of the reasons I wanted you back on to talk about this, because I'm curious with all the iOS updates, all those different things that have been hitting us over the past couple of years, how have you been increasing your traffic over the last year?
Yeah. So what we typically look for is we have our silos, and our silos are make money, save money, pay off debt, and invest, right? And so we try to figure out what content gaps there are. So what are we missing that we need to fill in? And oftentimes, if we're linking to an external website like Investopedia or anything, CNN or Bankrate, whatever it might be, well, why don't we have an article about what we're linking out to, right? Why would we have to send them to someplace else? Why can't we create something in-house that's really going to help them, keep them on the site, and really add value without them having to leave? And so that was one way that we did it, right? So kind of filling those gaps. Another way was looking, kind of what I hinted to earlier, which is looking for other verticals to say, hey, what's kind of crosses over? And so just give you kind of an idea, like selling silver or gold, right? Like
right.
A lot of people, let's just say, you're trying, it's COVID or post-COVID times, right? You're like, hey, I'm trying to make some extra money. Well, do you have gold jewelry lying around, silver jewelry, right? Like, oh, this is a way that you can kind of make money, but we've never really thought about it before. And we rank in the top of Google for both of those terms. And then we're able to monetize it through affiliate ads, where we have or affiliate relationships, I should say, to where if they pick a certain number of those, that we would get paid, right? And so really just kind of looking for how do we branch out, how do we figure out what's missing within our content and fill in those gaps.
Yeah, I love that. What's so unique about that too is you kind of caught yourself. So it's not really ads, it's affiliate partnerships. And I love that because, the traditional blog, we all know it, right? You look up a recipe on Google and you have to scroll through like miles of ads before you can get to the recipe, right? Excuse me. My wife hates it. I hate it. And the smart bloggers now are actually putting it at the top, skip to the recipe, right? Because then I'll actually come back and I will consume your ads more often. Totally beside the point. But what you're talking about is actually giving people real value and then just adding the links and like, hey, here's where you go. And you make partnerships with those people. Is that correct? With the people
Correct.
selling
Yeah.
the services?
And to be full disclosure, we do have pages that have ads on it, but it's
Right.
probably, it's less than half of our content, right? So most
Right.
of our content does not have display ads. I personally hate them, right? Like I feel like they're annoying and there's so many of them and you're like, just give me the content. And so that's the beauty of affiliate partnerships is you actually want to sell your gold necklace, right? And you're like, give me the pros and cons of each of these options. And then you're just going to make the choice. And like, well, why not? We get a cut for making that introduction and saying, hey, here's
Right.
10 options. You pick the one that works for you. We make some money off of it. So I really found that to be a kind of a win-win-win for the reader, for us, and for the brands.
Yeah, I love that. I would call it almost like networking 3.0, you know, like we talked, like it's become people ask me all the time too, is like, where are you making your money? And it's from that thing. It's on a higher level, not they're coming to my site, but ultimately it's making great relationships, connecting other businesses and helping them solve real needs. You know, if somebody comes to me and says, hey, I need to grow my Instagram. I know a guy who can do that. He kicks me a cut. Right. And it ultimately, I think people overcomplicate how much it takes to make good money just knowing people, right? And getting to connect. And so I love how you've been able to do that on a more macro scale, to where you can, leverage, what do you have, hundreds of articles now at this point to help people really get a good grasp for topics and teaching them good things, but then also sending them off to actually go take that action. So how are you setting up most of these partnerships? Is it usually on like a percentage cut deal, or do you guys work on a more of a, pay us a monthly retainer or something?
Yeah, so a lot of them are on networks. So we use networks like Impact Radius or Share a Sale, AWIN, those type of things. So which a network is basically, for those who are listening that don't know, is basically a place where brands can go and you can sign up as a publisher and have access to thousands of brands in one place instead of having to reach out to all these different brands individually. But we got to a point now where we can develop those relationships direct with a lot of brands because they want to bypass necessarily like having that network. A lot of times they'll have their own way of tracking, and that helps them to give us a healthier payout, but also they don't have to pay as much in fees for somebody else to manage it. So so we kind of have a mixture of both of that direct relationship plus the working in the networks.
Yeah. Well, and so just out of curiosity, so for you, do you actually leverage a lot of these different methods for yourself that you're recommending to people in these articles? Because I know you're not the one writing every article. There's no way you could be, because you'd be writing 24/7. But like, do you use those methodologies?
When you say methodologies, you mean as far as,
So like
explain?
an article gets written about, selling your gold chains or maybe investing, I don't know, whatever you've talked about, right? Investing in crypto or something. Do you typically follow a lot of those same suggestions as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So typically what I'll do, even if I Google search it, right? Like, and sometimes our site will come up. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like, I didn't realize that particular company did that, right? And then I'll look. So I would say just in my shopping habits in general, I will Google something. I want to read a list, and I don't like long lists, right? So if I see 100, I'm like, okay, you didn't do the due diligence to trim out the fat, right? Like I want it, get me down to the best. You had 100 you reviewed, and here are the top 10, and then I want to from that decide, okay, what are the top 3, and then what are the pros and cons? Okay, this is the one I want, right? So yeah, that's definitely how I personally make decisions. Definitely have used our site and the content that our writers have written to guide those decisions. I've been in it for a while to know a lot of these brands already, or talk to them directly to kind of know, oh, this is the best player, or the one that's going to be the best deal or best interest rate. But yeah, for sure, that's something that I use.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I was curious if it's like it's drinking your own Kool-Aid, right? And
Oh
half
yeah,
the
for
time
sure.
it's like, are you actually doing what you promote to people? And then talk to me about how you're actually finding these content ideas, right? Because coming up with good content that actually yields a real result, I mean, a real value has to be provided. So how are you guys going out and finding these? And I'm also going to add in an extra question on top of that, which is, how did you do it before you had any real traffic?
Yeah. So, I mean, I start there. I think you kind of, I say, what are the pillars, right? You have these 4 pillars: make money, save money, pay off debt. you're kind of saying, what are the top 10 articles you would need in that pillar, right? So it would be, okay, what kind of debts are we going to talk about? Be like, well, how do you pay off credit card debt? How do you pay off student loan debt? Is debt consolidation a good idea? What's better, the debt snowball or that avalanche, right? You start to kind of like get this idea of like, what would people actually ask? And then once you run out of ideas, you can start to look at who are the key players in your market. What are they writing, right? And kind of get an idea for, especially if in our industry, NerdWallet is $1 billion company. So if you have $1 billion and you have editors and graphic designers and staff writers, like you are for sure doing the research to make sure this content that we're writing is going to make us a return, right? They have shareholders and such. So really kind of looking and seeing what are they doing that fits within our model that maybe we're missing, kind of once again, filling those gaps. I'd say to answer your first question, I think I was a little bit less structured when I started. When I started, I was like, hey, I sold an upside down car. I'm going to write a post about that, right? Or, hey, I figured out how to trim my budget in 10 different areas. So I want to write how to trim your budget, 10 ways to trim your budget, right? So it's very much practical, like what's my personal experience that I can share with people. That was kind of the first approach to it. And that didn't get a lot of traffic.
Unfortunately. I'm sure it started being like a more of a crowdsourcing thing where you're like, okay, what do you guys actually want, in the long run? Yeah, it's cool that you were able to do it as like, you start it with yourself of like, hey, this is what I found, I think people undervalue that of like just giving recommendations. People just want to say, okay, you've done a little bit more research than me. What was your top 5? Like you mentioned this a couple of minutes ago where, you pick out 100 content or pieces of, I don't know, different places you could sell gold or whatever. Here are the 5 places that I would recommend, like for XYZ reason. And I think people undervalue those type of articles. But those are the ones that seem to be getting some of the best traction. I would say the exact same thing when it comes to podcasting, is giving people like, just recommend things. People end up buying those. So it's really cool. You guys have built a whole business around that. So you mentioned, Deacon, NerdWallet, right? They're your big competitor and everything. What's your target? You guys trying to knock them off the map, or is it saying, hey, let's co-opetition it? Like what's the game plan for you guys?
Yeah, it's interesting. So they started, I want to say 1 year before I started, right? So there's always this like, oh my gosh, what am I doing with my life, right? They're $1 billion company. But I will say there's different goals in life, right? As an individual, I had to say, what do I want to do? Do I want to be the CEO of a $1 billion company? Not really. Like when I look at what that takes, I want to have a balanced life. I love the schedule that I have right now, right? The flexibility, spend time with my family, my kids, go travel. And so it's one of those things where, is it possible? For sure. But would there be a lot of sacrifices that I don't think would be worth it for me, right? Yeah. So I'd say in my mind, just continue to grow, continue to help people navigate the landscape and see what it looks like. We've had a lot of interested buyers in the site, and it's got a very good valuation. And so, if the right deal came along, would consider selling. But at this time, I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and it's growing. So it's fun. It's just kind of a good place to be right now.
Yeah, I love that answer, man. It's funny because the more I'm meeting with people like you've done some big things already. You've built a business that is spectacular, honestly. Like you've done it in a way that most people can't, and most people wish they could have, to replicate your SEO success and the money you're making from it. It's just so interesting to me, the way you're doing it, but also like your mentality behind it, right? You don't have to be the billionaire to be happy. And I know for myself recently, I've had to have that same question with our own company is like, how much further do I really want to grow this one? Like, is it going to be sacrificing, like you said, sacrificing the time just so I can make more money, even though I'm completely content where I'm at? So it's cool to hear you say that. You spoke my thoughts into words. So when it comes to next steps for you guys, what's kind of the thing you're excited about right now that you guys are trying to accomplish?
Yeah, so the thing that we're excited about is really updating the content to be more comprehensive, let's say. What I found is, old school SEO was you have a certain amount of words on a page, you have a certain structure, you link it a certain way and it ranks, right? Like that. I'm oversimplifying it, but that was the way. the challenge is nowadays people want videos, people want images, right? Like whatever will help them in that process. And so and that's costs a lot more money, takes a lot more time. So we're going through all of our old content and we're updating it with kind of this new format, new structure. It looks so much better. You're like, oh my gosh, it looks like a nerd wallet, even better in some cases, right? I mean, we have like I don't want to call it in-house, but we kind of have a dedicated graphic designer that really does a great job. And so, I've got some videographers that are helping out with the video side of things, making video stuff look amazing. So it's really kind of how can we go next level with the media to really help people with that content. And I think that's what's going to be a differentiator between us and say a nerd wallet, right? Like they don't even have video in most of their content. They don't even have images in a lot of their content. So it's kind of like, how can we, even though we're not that big of a player, how can we be good at what we do and stand out,
Yeah. Well, so then is like social media part of your play, or do you guys find that that's not really a good medium for you?
Yeah, that's a mixed bag. So it's interesting. Yesterday, I had a post go viral on Pinterest, right? But it's so hit or miss, and it's like it's hard to build a business around something that's that volatile, right? And I've had it happen before. It's like I've had Pinterest, pins that would get like 100,000 visitors to one page in a month from a Pinterest pin, and you're like, that's incredible, but you can't replicate that, or it's very hard to do. And so for us, it's like I like the slow and steady growth, with those little viral things thrown in there, because that's just, bonus on the top, right?
Yeah.
So for us, we do social media. I mean, we have custom pins made and Instagram images and stuff like that, but it's still not a big traffic driver for us. So
yeah, not an integral part of the system. See, and these are just genuine questions I have for you, because ultimately it's so interesting that social media for most people actually doesn't end up yielding anything for that same reason. Like you said, it's volatile. I think it's cool that you've been able to identify that. What was the post that went viral, just out of curiosity?
It's funny. It's best jobs for nurses at home or something like that. Huh. So, which is interesting because you think there's probably a lot of nurses that are like, hey, we'd love to work from home now, for whatever reason. And so I was just shocked. I looked at it, I was like, that's not one we rank in Google for, right? It was kind of like I have a buddy that his wife was a nurse, and I was like, hey, this would be a great idea for an article, because specific fields people are looking for work. Right. So, and that's another thing, realizing what you can rank for, right? Like you have sites like Indeed and Monster.com, and you're like, it's going to be really hard to compete with sites like that, but in Pinterest world, not so much, right? They don't compete in that world. So,
yeah, geez, that's awesome. Well, and then, so explain to me the wrap, why a wrap, and why, and because like we've been talking about your content and then you're like, hey, here's a wrap. Explain that.
Yeah. So during COVID, I have a buddy here. He's also a personal finance blogger. His name's Chris Peach. His site's Money Peach. And we would go work together at like I guess call it a co-working spot, and we're like, man, what can we do? Like, we're kind of bored. So he's like, you ever heard of this guy? I don't even remember the guy's name actually. But it's called Everyday Average. Oh my gosh, normal guy, everyday normal guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, no, I've never. So we watched it. So we're watching this video. It's like 10 years old or whatever. Really bad quality, but it's so funny, and the beat's really good. Everything, I mean, the rap's good and everything. The production was horrible, but it had like 47 million views. And I was like, dude, well, couldn't we make one for personal finance that really like helps people? So it was really kind of like, hey, we're bored. It's COVID. We're watching YouTube videos. He was very much like a Beastie Boys fan. I grew up listening to like Eminem. NF's probably my favorite rapper right now. But I was like, yeah, why don't we come up with a song similar to that, but like teaching people how to become millionaires? And they're like, what if we just called it Everyday Millionaire, right? These are things that people that become millionaires that don't inherit the money. These are things they do every day to become millionaires. And so it's just fun, catchy. And so it's just something like, hey, how can we use kind of our creative talents to get this out there,
Yeah. Which I think is fun because you did it for fun. It might yield you a good chunk of traffic. So let's make that go viral, everybody. So the link for that is wellkeptwallet.com/everyday-millionaire-song. Make sure you guys go check that out. And then Deacon, just to wrap this up, if you could give us one final parting piece of guidance, what would it be?
Yeah, I would say slow down. I think what happens a lot of times is we get caught in the busyness of life and we are just go, 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 go. I got to go to this appointment. I got to do this. I got to drop this off at this part. It's like, just slow down and say like, and start to ask yourself some really deep questions. Like, what do you want out of life? What's important to you? If you were doing this 5 years from now, would you still be happy? Or would you want something to do different, and then start acting on those things, right? It's hard to give cookie cutter answers, but I think at least the slow down, reflect on where you're at and where you want to be, and then start pivoting course from there. And I think for me, every time I do that, like my life gets so much better, right? I get out of the busyness and I'm focusing on things that are meaningful and pointing me in the direction that I ultimately want to go.